We spend so much time in Knox County, surrounded by absolute silence. The power grid fails, the water shuts off, and the only sounds left are the wind through the trees, the rain beating against boarded-up windows, and the shuffling footsteps of the dead. It is incredibly easy to forget that during the first week of the Knox event, the airwaves were deafening. Before the TV stations went to static, and before the radio frequencies faded into a low hum, the government, the media, and the terrified civilian population fought a massive war of information. By tracking down operational ham radios and securing working televisions during those crucial first 9 days, a survivor can piece together exactly how the old world fell. It was not destroyed by a sudden, overwhelming wave of the undead. It was dismantled day by day, broadcast by broadcast, through a web of military arrogance, media compliance, and a terrifying biological mutation. The timeline officially begins in the first week of July 1993. When survivors first wake up in their safe houses, the military quarantine is already absolute. The roads leading out of Muldroff, Rosewood, and West Point have been severed. Heavily armed soldiers and concrete barricades have formed an impenetrable wall around Knox County. If you tune a television to the Triple N News Network on that first day, you are introduced to Jackie Jaye. She is a seasoned professional news anchor, and she represents the voice of order. In those early hours, the media narrative is entirely controlled by the military. Jackie reports that an exclusion zone has been established due to a localized outbreak of an unexplained illness, referred to unofficially as the Knox infection. She urges calm. She interviews experts who assure the public that the situation is contained. At this point, the government is actively hiding the dead. Tuning into the emergency broadcast frequencies reveals the voice of General John McGrew, the military commander in charge of the quarantine. McGrew is cold, authoritative, and terrifyingly confident. He broadcasts on a loop, telling the people trapped inside the zone to remain in their homes. He states, as a matter of absolute fact, that the infection is spread solely through fluid contact, scratches, and bites. He promises that relief efforts are being organized. The military strategy in these first 3 days is clear. Establish a media blackout, contain the physical threat, and prevent a national panic. Telecommunications in the region are abruptly cut. Phone lines go dead. The people inside the zone are completely cut off from their families on the outside, left to listen to General McGrew telling them to stay put and wait for a rescue that is never coming. But even with a media blackout, the truth begins to bleed through. The local radio frequencies become a chaotic mess of terrified civilians trying to understand why their neighbors are trying to eat them. Because the military refuses to tell the truth, rumors spread like wildfire. Callers flood the local radio stations, swearing that the sickness came from tainted meat at local fast food chains, or blaming a strange illness that had been affecting stray dogs in the weeks prior. Amidst this chaos, a single pirate radio station cuts through the noise. Broadcasting on LBMW Kentucky Radio, a man going by the alias Kitten becomes the only person telling the absolute truth. He operates outside the military's control, broadcasting warnings to anyone who will listen. He tells the people inside the zone that the government is lying. He talks about seeing military cleanup crews operating in secret, and he describes a foul, sickly smell in the air over Muldroff just before the panic started. The mainstream media dismisses him as a paranoid conspiracy theorist. The tragedy is that if more people had listened to the pirate radio instead of the official news, thousands of lives might have been saved. By day 4, the illusion of control shatters. A photograph is leaked to the national press. It shows the perimeter of the Knox exclusion zone, and it clearly depicts a massive, violent riot. But it is not a riot of looters. It is a desperate mob of healthy, uninfected civilians begging to be let out, facing down a line of soldiers aiming automatic weapons directly at them. Jackie Jaye's professional composure on the Triple N network begins to crack. She is forced to report on the leaked photo, and you can hear the doubt bleeding into her voice. She starts pressing her military liaisons for real answers, demanding to know why lethal force is being authorized against American citizens who are simply trying to flee a quarantine zone. The narrative shifts from a coordinated medical response to a hostile military occupation. And then, the defining moment of the Knox event occurs, the exact moment the war is lost. Around day 5 or 6, reports begin flooding the news desks from outside the quarantine zone. People in Louisville, Cincinnati, and even further across the country are suddenly falling ill. But these people have not been scratched. They have not been bitten. They have had no contact with anyone from Knox County. They develop a severe fever. They become incredibly nauseous, and within days, they die and reanimate. The virus had mutated. The Knox infection was no longer just a fluid-transferred pathogen. It was airborne. The reaction on the broadcast networks is pure, unfiltered terror. General McGrew issues a new statement, but the confident, authoritative tone from the first day is completely gone. He sounds strained, desperate. He issues an immediate, ruthless order for extreme measures, authorizing soldiers to shoot anyone, infected or not, who approaches the perimeter. The military realizes that their barricades are completely useless against a virus that is drifting on the wind. Once the virus breached containment, the timeline of the Knox event aggressively accelerated from a localized disaster to a global extinction event. By the end of the first week, the broadcasts shift from local Kentucky news to international panic. The World Health Organization officially steps in. We hear reports on the radio that the President of the United States has been moved to a secure bunker. Global air travel is entirely grounded. But it is too late. News anchors begin receiving live, frantic updates that the sickness has crossed the ocean. Cases are confirmed in London, then Norwich, then Mogadishu and Seoul. The military blockade in Kentucky, which seemed so terrifying and imposing just days prior, suddenly becomes completely irrelevant. The entire world was now inside the exclusion zone. And as the world outside burned, the physical infrastructure of Knox County began its automated death rattle. If you listen closely to the utility frequencies, you can hear the exact moments the grid is abandoned. Knox Power and Knox Water issue automated warnings about system strain. Without human operators to manage the substations, the power grid begins experiencing rolling blackouts. The water pressure in the pipes starts to drop. The silence of the dead is suddenly punctuated by the terrifying sound of a refrigerator turning off for the last time, or the realization that the faucets have run completely dry. It is a slow, methodical dismantling of everything that made the modern world function. The final days of the broadcast networks are haunting, as the airborne strain ravages the population outside the zone. The news anchors watching the world end realize they are trapped in their studios. Frank Kleiner, an anchor for the N&N network, delivers a somber, devastating final sign-off, admitting that the infection is everywhere and there is nowhere left to run. Jackie Jaye, who started the week as the polished, confident face of the official narrative, is heard in her final broadcast, completely breaking down. The pristine studio audio is replaced by the raw sound of her being barricaded in a room. She abandons the teleprompter entirely. She cries. She apologizes to the viewers. In the background of her final transmission, you can hear the unmistakable sound of heavy doors being battered down, followed by the terrifying, chaotic noise of the dead breaking into the studio. And then, the signal cuts out. By day 9, almost every channel has gone to static. The emergency automated broadcast system continues to loop weather reports, a cold, robotic voice listing the temperature and wind direction to a population that no longer exists. We treat this apocalypse as if it were an unavoidable force of nature. But the broadcasts tell a different story. They prove that in the most critical hours of human history, the institutions designed to protect the public prioritized their own secrets over civilian lives. They ordered people to stay inside and wait for a rescue they knew was impossible. They lied until the very moment the air itself became poisonous. The dead outnumber the living in Knox County. But as you walk through the empty streets, passing the silent televisions and the dead radios, you realize the hardest truth of all. The zombies did not destroy the world. The world was destroyed by a government that refused to tell the truth, until there was no one left to hear it. If you enjoyed digging into the files today, leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. There are a lot more ghosts in this game, and we are going to find all of them. Until next time, stay safe out there, and thanks for visiting the Outpost archives.